Well, hello everyone and welcome again to Painless Universal Conversation with myself and Welsh. Today we'll be talking about anxiety and panic disorder. So many people are going through it right now, especially with everything going on in the world today. You turn on the television, the first thing you see is panic attack because you're not quite sure where the world is going. My guest today, former gymnastic lady, will be telling us about her own journey and her own story on how she has dealt with panic disorder, anxiety, and found her joy. My guest, Allyse. We'll be having a conversation how she's overcome the pain from crippling anxiety and panic attack. We'll be asking her what it felt like to go through that pain. When did she realize actually that she had anxiety? Because that's the biggest question. So many people might be going through it right now, not realizing that this is something they need to take serious and take action. We'll be asking her, how did she do it? What is anxiety disorder? What is panic attack? How would you know? How do you heal from it? Are some of the questions we'll be talking about. Who is she? Who is my guest? And how did she find her joy along the way? Well, stay tuned, watch this conversation to understand more how you find your joy when dealing with things that are out of your control. Meet my wonderful guest, Allyse, as she shares her beautiful story and her daily life, ways of dealing with anxiety, and how she's found her own joy. Well, hello everyone and welcome again to Painless Universal, a conversation with myself and Welsh. As I said in my introduction, today's conversation is really about the anxiety and panic attack. How do you deal with all of that? We've seen all the headlines, we've seen everything going on in the world today, and so many of you out there, I know, are going through that pain. My guest, Allyse, she has dealt with this pain. She has dealt with the anxiety pain, panic attack, and she'll be telling us her own journey, how it all started and how she got over it. She'll be giving us healing tips, what is anxiety, and she'll be telling us most importantly, who she is. Allyse, how are you today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. I'm really delighted to have you because our conversation is something that, especially with your conversation, what we're going to have, what we're going to talk about, is something that really means a lot to me because sometimes in my own world, I feel that pain, I feel that anxiety, and I feel that panic attack. And I say this to people, and a lot of people don't know when they're actually feeling anxious or when they panic attack. They don't know what's happening to them. They just feel, oh, probably I've taken too much caffeine or probably is something, but not realizing actually you're getting yourself to that stage. Before we get into all of that, who are you?
Oh, good question. So I would quantify myself as just someone who has experienced a lot of anxiety in her life. And that was really the impetus for why I wanted to start my Instagram and talk about it and help share experiences, hopefully similar experiences with people. I probably started experiencing anxiety about 10 years ago. To your point, I didn't realize it was anxiety. I probably even had it earlier than that as well. I was an elite level gymnast growing up. I competed internationally for the USA. I dealt with a lot of pressure at a very young age. And I knew back then too that the pressure didn't sit right with me. It kind of made my stomach hurt, different things like that. But I didn't realize what it was. And then later in life, when I started working and dealing with societal pressures, all of that stuff, I have a high pressure job. So dealing with kind of the constant needing to be on and responsive all the time and living up to people's expectations, quite frankly, probably just got the better of me. And I didn't know how to deal with it. I wasn't knowing what I was feeling, anything like that. I actually remember talking to my therapist at the time when I first started to experience anxiety, and I would call it my funny time because I didn't understand what I was feeling. The best way I could describe it was I just felt funny. I didn't feel myself. And I went through some really, really low lows with anxiety, and it definitely spiraled into a disorder. I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder and panic disorder. I lived that way for many years as well. And it took me a long time to figure out how to work with it and to live with it and to be comfortable with it all and to not let it control my life and be scared, which is really why I started my Instagram a couple of years ago, or a year ago, actually. And, just wanted to share experiences, help people feel a little bit less alone in what they were experiencing. And the response was nothing I could have ever expected. I literally am just, copying and pasting what's in my brain, and sharing experiences there. So it's lovely to hear from people that understand that this is a difficult situation, but to help give them a little bit of hope that there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
And that's so important because most of the time whenever anyone is going through this, we forget that there's light. We just feel all you see at that particular time is darkness. When you look at your childhood, could you just tell me a little bit about your childhood growing up?
Yeah. So I started gymnastics when I was 4 years old. I have a sister and I have a brother. So I have two siblings. Sorry, it's my dog. She has a collar on. And so I started gymnastics when I was 4 years old. I immediately jumped into competitive gymnastics and I competed competitively up until level 9. I was, I think, 11 years old at the time. And my gymnastics coach, who had coached me from the age of 4 up until then, passed away suddenly. And it was a really hard experience to get through. He was kind of my father figure, honestly, or my parental figure, if you will. We worked out maybe 60 hours a week. So we were working out a lot. I was still going to school, but gymnastics consumed my life. And then I ended up quitting traditional gymnastics and getting into what's called sports acrobatics. They're a part of the USA Gymnastics Federation. They compete where USA Gymnastics competes. They go to the Olympics, but they don't necessarily get on TV or anything like that. So I started doing that and I became elite, and I made the USA national team. So I competed with all of those people who traveled internationally, and I got to do a lot of fun, cool experiences and go places that a lot of people probably wouldn't get to normally do, which was awesome. But it was a lot for, I think at the end, it was 16 when I quit. But there's a lot of things in gymnastics and in that culture that I don't think it's just really starting to come to light, as far as eating disorders are concerned. The pressure that is put on you as a young female to keep your body in a certain guideline. My coach at one point had put saran wrap around me in a black trash bag and told me to run laps until I lost a pound. Like there's lots of crazy things that especially back then, that was very normal. Now it would not be well accepted by anyone, and parents would step in and what have you. But back then that was definitely just, that's what you did if you wanted to go somewhere. And so
Wow,
you worked through it. And you did have a lot of male coaches and different things like that. So it was a lot of pressure, but it was the good with the bad, if you will. I got to, again, to experience so many different things, got to go tons of places, and I definitely wouldn't trade those experiences for anything. And if anything at all, being able to help future gymnasts or people who are in that sport stand up for themselves a little bit more is something that's always been a little bit of a passion for mine as well.
when did you realize that you're starting to become anxious? When did you start realizing that I think I have an anxiety, I'm having anxiety attacks? How did it all get started?
So towards the end of my gymnastics career, I was very uncomfortable all the time. It's the best way I could describe it. And I wasn't having fun. It was too much for me. And I didn't necessarily realize I was dealing with anxiety, but looking back, I know now that I was. Um, I really started to understand I was dealing with anxiety probably about 10 years ago. I had some really good days where I felt good and happy and my emotions felt in check. And then the next day, it's just like you feel dreadful and you feel like something bad is looming over you constantly. And you're so uncomfortable just sitting there and you're really inside your head. And I knew that that wasn't normal. I could tell that I was spending too much time inside my own thoughts. And that's really when I realized that I need to go see a therapist and figure this out. Unfortunately, it got worse before it got better, but that was probably when I first started to realize it.
Being a gymnast or doing any kind of athletics is always so difficult. I think I always say to people, I really admire sportsmen because they do things that most people have to train their mind over and over again. Did this lead on to some panic attack from being such a professional, trying to be the best? Did that cause any issue?
I don't know if I'm sure it directly related at some point. But back then it was more just trying to live up to people's expectations and being on large stages, you feel and the lights on you and your heart's racing really fast. It was exciting, but dreadful at the same time. So I'm sure they related, but I probably couldn't quantify it until later in life.
Yes, I love your Instagram caption that you have so many powerful words out there. And one of the ones that really stuck with me when I read this was your powerful caption of stories such as things that can trigger anxiety. Everyone experiences anxiety differently. Managing loneliness when you have anxiety. Could you describe these topics and how they've really helped you really relate to your audiences?
Yeah, anxiety is such a lonely experience, and it's crazy to think about how much you're inside your own mind. You don't even understand how much time you're spending within yourself. And I call it going internal, if you will. Some of the loneliest years of my life were when I was dealing with such crippling anxiety. You separate from people, you're afraid of going places, you're afraid of dealing with the things that you think are going to bring you some type of anxiety or panic. And whenever I would talk about that with some friends who I knew also experienced anxiety, those were similar experiences. And so, and those were the things that really were the worst for me. So for my Instagram page, I really like to talk about the things that I don't think people understand that they're going through or realize that it's a direct reflection of anxiety, and kind of normalizing the experiences that they go through with dealing with anxiety, because there's so many triggers out there. We live in such a fast-paced on-demand world, and we're expected to do things instantly, be available, do all of these things, fix our problems instantly, and that's just not realistic. And I think taking a step back and recognizing that anxiety is just a human response to being overwhelmed. And we live in a very overwhelming world right now, more so than ever. And it's okay to be overwhelmed. There's nothing wrong with that. Learning how to separate yourself a little bit, deal with the loneliness, deal with the fears, and walk through it as seamlessly as you possibly can. That's the real goal with trying to spread awareness on my Instagram page.
How do you manage the mental discipline? Because you're quite, for you to recover from it, I mean, you're still working your way through it, but you've managed to find your own grounds and say, look, I could now understand when I'm starting to have these feelings. I can now understand when my panic attack is probably coming on. How do you manage these feelings so that the next panic attack or the next anxiety doesn't come on?
Great question. So for a long time, honestly, I would have to say I just gave up, and I would allow the anxiety to come, and I'd be like, well, it's here. I'm going to go to bed now. And that's my day. And I would allow it to fully consume me. I honestly just got really angry with it because I recognized that I was not living life. I was living life according to what anxiety and panic were telling me to do, which was to be a shell of myself. And after a while, that just really started to bother me because I've never been one to necessarily back down from a challenge. And, gymnastics, I always loved going after the tough things and different stuff like that. So I took that anger and I applied it to forcing myself out of my bubble. Driving is probably one of the ones that I still deal with the most these days. But I just, you set a plan and then you go for it. So if the plan is that you need to drive every single day, and if you get a panic attack while you're driving, or you do all these things, telling yourself it's okay, you'll get through it, you always have, and getting to the other side and then congratulating yourself that you just did it. And then doing it again and repeating it. So practicing, making sure that you are not succumbing to the fears. That was really when I noticed anxiety started to change for me. So I did a lot of practicing and a lot of self-positive talk, and congratulating myself on things that probably in my previous life I would have laughed at myself for. But in that moment, I was like, this is awesome. You got out of bed. You did such a good job today. You need to be your own motivator. No one's going to motivate you in the way that you want to be motivated. And speaking of loneliness, you are your own strength and your own courage and your own source of inspiration. And so if you can learn to talk to yourself in a positive way, to say, it's okay, I know I'm going to be uncomfortable, but I'm going to get through it, and then getting through it, and then telling yourself how proud you are. There's something about keeping a promise to yourself that really helps motivate you way more than someone else saying, congratulations, I'm glad you did that. It's a self-fulfilling thing that really, it makes you feel so much better than anything I think anyone else could possibly do for you.
Absolutely.
I found.
I have to ask you, someone watching this would be asking themselves, what is the difference between anxiety and panic attack? And how do you really know you are going through that phase?
What you're dealing with? Yeah. So I actually get this question quite a bit. There's various degrees of anxiety. Most people probably deal with a very basic level of anxiety, which is stress, a little bit higher. Honestly, it's probably a little healthy for you too. And in the sense that it helps fuel you, it shows you where you maybe need to work on things, different things like that. When it becomes an issue is when anxiety you become fearful of everything. It's not just one thing anymore. You literally fear everything, and you fear itself. And that's really what generalized anxiety disorder is to you. You wake up every day, your mind is spinning. The thought of walking downstairs to go get coffee somehow makes you feel very uncomfortable. You're just very on edge all the time. You have a lot of symptoms. Your heart rate tends to be a little bit higher. Your mind is working really hard. You don't sleep very much. There's lots of things. That's more generalized anxiety disorder. The difference there with panic disorder is that you get panic attacks, which I think there is some confusion around what exactly is an anxiety attack and a panic attack. But a panic attack is something that happens really suddenly. It's fast, comes out of nowhere. Typically, you get these hot flashes, you sweat, you you kind of feel like you're going crazy a little bit, but it happens and it will dissipate in probably like 10 minutes, I would say. It varies depending upon the person, but it tends to be quick. Anxiety attacks tend to be longer. You live in that constant state of anxiety it can be anywhere from a week to, I personally dealt with it for 6 months straight, and it's not fun. And you do typically get panic attacks with anxiety attacks as well, unfortunately. And that's the worst, is when you're already in a heightened state of anxiety and then you get a panic attack and you're just like internally you're screaming to yourself, oh, I just want this to turn off. How do I get my brain to stop? How do I stop sweating? How do I get my heart rate down? I just want to be.
I have to ask you, Lee, what is your passion in life, for example, and how does this help with your mental health? Because normally when I go through phases of life where I'm a little bit anxious about what I'm about to do, there's certain passions in life that helps me get through this. What would you normally do to help you get through your stages then? How does that help others, to encourage others to help them as well?
Yeah, so it's funny you say that, because I was thinking about this the other day, and I have many random little passions, but anxiety was something that honestly I thought was going to be the thing that killed me. I was very concerned that anxiety was the thing that was, going to take me out. And I found power and strength in looking my anxiety in the face and actually making it my passion, and the thing that now gives me a purpose and makes me weirdly excited, which is probably counterintuitive, but it's just weird to think about. The thing that I thought was really going to be the end of me is actually the thing that drives me the most these days. And if I would have said that to myself 5 years ago, I again would have laughed at myself, because at that time I thought I was always going to deal with anxiety. It was going to be an awful experience for me. I was always going to be miserable. And today it's literally the thing that makes me excited in life, which is again such an odd turn of events, but I'm here for it.
And you did it. And I see you're a very big advocate for mental health. You spread the word. What advice could you give to for anyone out there who might be going through it because of the pandemic, because of everything going on in the world? You turn on the television, the first thing you might see is not something so positive all the time. So what advice would you give to someone out there who might be going through a deep anxiety and not knowing how to get out of this, and to reduce their level of anxiety so it doesn't build up more and more, and and then it goes out of hands?
I think it's really important to be realistic with where we're at in life and the pressures that we put on ourselves. I see people day in and day out say, I have all these things that I need to do and I can't live up to the expectations. But realistically, the expectation is probably not something you do need to live up to. We weren't meant to be in overdrive the way that we are right now. And we are finding ourselves more alone than ever with the pandemic, because we can't go out as often. We can't see as many people, which really leaves us to deal with ourselves. And we've never truly had to do that before, I don't think. So I think people get bogged down in their own, what they think is failure for their life. But I would challenge them to look at it from a different lens, as far as, we are in a pandemic. We are living in a crazy time right now. We are alone more than ever. So why do you feel that way? And is there something that has come out of the pandemic that you actually are proud of? You were alone, so you did have to deal with your thoughts for the first time. Isn't that kind of exciting that you got to deal with them, tackle them head on, and maybe get to know yourself a little bit better? We're always going to have mental health struggles. I don't care who you are. If you have a brain, you have mental health struggles, because we're living humans and that's what we do. We're literally designed to potentially combust a little bit and to learn from our ways in that. So there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with taking time for yourself, learning about yourself more, and just slowing down a little bit. That's something that I really try to stress to people as well, is that there's no rush. If you are dealing with a mental health struggle, or if you're dealing with anxiety, if you're dealing with panic disorder, do not try to rush to that finish line of, oh, I am free from all of this, I'm good, I'm strong. That shouldn't be the end goal, because if you skip over the part where you have to work within yourself, you're not really going to get to that end goal. You're just going to put a Band-Aid on it, and eventually that Band-Aid is going to pop off, and the wound's still going to be there. So my advice for people is to just slow down a little bit. Don't be so hard on yourself. It's perfectly acceptable to not be okay. And I don't think anyone who says that everything is just great day in, day out is lying.
I totally agree. Before I let you go, I have to ask you this question. How would you plan on finding joy and happiness through living with anxiety?
Honestly, it's the small things. I love just being present, reading, going for walks, taking in the scenery, being with friends, traveling, different little small things, and really appreciating those smaller moments. When before I was very worried about what anxiety was going to happen when I did those moments, now I'm living in those moments and finding that there's a lot of beauty surrounding us if we just take a moment and look around and allow the fear to be there. Don't try to push it away, deal with it. But for the most part, just look at what's around you. There's a lot of beauty around us. And I think a lot of times we don't look up and look at it as much as we should.
I think you're so spot on there, because it's just the small things. It's not sometimes counting our troubles, but also counting our blessings and understanding that you're on this phase, you're alive, you're breathing, you have everything intact. So find that joy within the small things in yourself. And I really appreciate what you've just said. And I hope it helps other people, anyone going through anxiety, to find the strength to keep going and keep moving. Any final words from yourself?
It will all be okay. I know it doesn't feel like it, but it will be. Problems will always be there, but that's fine. That's just life, and it will all be okay, and it'll all work out.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate this conversation with you, and I wish you a very great day. Thank you.